what's going on there? I guess kind of we're thinking physically and also psychologically and like emotionally. Physically is I mean even that is,
it should be obvious, but yeah, it isn't necessarily. The obvious thing is just in the sense that women are the ones who get pregnant, which means that in any heterosexual encounter there's that asymmetry. Also the fact that women are much smaller and weaker than men, but like a surprising degree. I think it's become easier to trivialize that difference because we live in a modern world where strength differences aren't as obvious, and even you can, like, if you don't have siblings and you don't go to the gym and you don't do any manual work, you can go like quite a long way without realizing that like your sibling is going to thrash you in a fight if he's male and you're female, you know, particularly post puberty, because different upper body differences, for instance, between men and women are wild. I think it's like a factor of 2. The male punching strength is twice as forceful as female on average, and it's one of those things that if you look at like a scatter graph showing different individuals, like yes, there are some isolated examples. Not as many as you might think, though, and definitely the extreme end, like Olympians, for instance. Like if women didn't have a protected category in the Olympics, they just wouldn't even make it anywhere close to actually competing in the games, because the difference is that stark, which matters, obviously, right? So if you're talking about like going home with the randomer, if a man and a woman are alone together, the man just inherently is going to have a physical advantage. Combined with the fact that the woman is the one who risks getting pregnancy, who suffers the risks associated with things like hormonal birth control. There are just a whole bunch of ways in which women are at a disadvantage in that kind of scenario.
This idea that men and women are different was pretty unfashionable when I was at university, and I'm not sure to what extent it still is, having been out of university now for several years. But often I would find that when I was talking to people about this, I'd be using the phrase, I'd be using the idea of averages and the idea of a normal distribution with just like an innate understanding of what a normal distribution is.
Yeah.
And yet people would always say, oh, but my friend is 6'3" and she could take any man in a fight.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, okay.
Smart people can be really dumb about that.
Yeah, like what's going on there?
Even
I think
scientists. It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, because people will tend to just come up with exceptions. And of course those exceptions exist. Like I'm completely willing to incorporate exceptions into this whole analysis. It is funny how people tend not to do it about more morally neutral things. Like height, for instance.
Yeah.
We're happy to accept that men are taller than women on average, even if there are tall women and there are some short men. Like the difference is massive. Similarly on other physical differences. And the psychological ones is the one that people really get upset about. Yeah. And obviously psychological differences are much more amenable to cultural influence than physical ones. Still, there's loads of evidence, and the evidence accumulates more and more because we now have more sophisticated research methods that makes it clear that there are some important differences between men and women on average, and they hold true cross-culturally.